because I have some type of an issue or problem. It's because it's kind of a punch of karma. Punch karma is where you like clear your systems, and so it's kind of a good, healthy thing to do. Good morning.
Good morning.
As usual, I like to dive right in because I've been thinking a lot about this. To describe the ineffable, to relate and communicate that which cannot be communicated. The in-between state. This talk today is not about after death, afterlife, or prior. It is literally going to be about the absolute in-between state, the condition. So I've been thinking a lot about it, and I got two references here. Number one, I couldn't decide which one to use first. I'll let you choose. Complicated or simple? Which one goes first?
Let's start with simple.
All right. So the simple is this, and it's still not going to be that again. We're talking about something that's very ineffable. The simple is this. Have you ever been asleep while being aware of being asleep?
Usually only in the in-between.
Right. And so again, when you Google that, automatically comes up with sleep disorders and all kinds of issues with the transition state. And I can't remember which one that is, but I'm a sleep expert, but I don't keep track of all the details. Indeed, when we begin to fall asleep, the transition between wakefulness and sleepfulness is we have this sense like, like our mind is usually kind of like, okay, there's some weird thoughts. Like, where am I getting this stuff? Like, this is kind of strange shit, right? Oh, I must be falling asleep. And that's why I'm getting into kind of a dream state. That's why I'm seeing, right? But what I'm talking about is something that's very different. Most of my sleep time through the night, other than about 2 hours or 2 hours, I'm in maybe more of a delta state where I'm completely out and I'm very completely unaware. And I love that. That's total rest. The rest of it, I'm not in a transition state. I experience that too, but I am in a sleepful wakefulness or wakeful sleepfulness, wakeful sleep. I am often very aware that I am asleep and I'm thinking and I'm interacting with the thoughts, and it's a process. And I love it because I get a lot of great thinking done while I'm asleep because my ego is out of the way. My conscious mind is dormant. And so, therefore, the more pure I, can think more freely and clearly without any interference from ego, from self, from world. So it's a more raw state. And I really love it. I mean, I tell you, I do some of my best thinking when I'm asleep. I really do. I mean, it's really a powerful experience, and I'm enjoying it, and I'm aware of it while it's happening. It's not like I wake up later and then I'm aware of it. I'm aware of it while it's happening, which is why, like this morning, when I actually woke up, I don't know what time it is. I get a little outside light that goes off in my yard. That's a nice beautiful green light that lights up the trees and kind of dim and it's beautiful. That's kind of my way. That, and when the coffee maker goes on, then I'm like, okay, it must be time to get up. I don't have alarms or anything like that. And so when I wake up, again, it's not like I look back and think about how I now remember that I was dreaming things and thinking things and all that kind of stuff. It's that I'm in the middle of it and I'm waking up and I'm like in the midstream of these thoughts and processes. And I don't know if it's time to get up yet or not. Because sometimes the light outside is not on yet. It's so dark, like this morning. And I'm like, well, I woke up and I got to go to the bathroom. So it's probably routinely, that's typically my mind is rested, and therefore it's going to be getting up soon. And sure enough, then I hear the coffee maker go off. So the point is that for the last 2 hours prior to this, I've been very aware and very aware that I'm sleeping and I'm enjoying that and still very thoughtful. And the cool thing is, post transition state to sleep, for the first 2 hours of my nighttime rest, I am aware Then again, there's maybe 2 hours where I'm completely unconscious, which is just complete dormancy and rest. And then there's the last 2 hours prior to that. So is that it's a combination. The thoughts kind of happen automatically on their own. They're manufactured on their own. And then at the same time, I'm also involved. So again, we're talking about a paradox here. I'm contradicting myself. How can I be aware and yet unaware? And this again is the ineffable. This is the phenomena that we use terms like metaphysical and paranormal because there are phenomena that are not descriptive or aligned with our material view of things, but still they exist. We all experience something like love. I mean, we know chemically and all that, but it's still something we all experience. And yet, technically, it doesn't exist. And yet we know it does. So, again, the best I can describe it is that I am simultaneously involved with the thinking process, engaged with it. I am directing my thoughts. I am curious. I am having thought processes, and yet they're kind of just happening spontaneously on their own. My mind is functioning on its own level and on its own, while again, I am also involved like a dialogue. This is separate from what I would refer to within the book, within the portal, about my interaction with Akashic agents during sleep time. That's different. That's a conversation. We're not going to be talking about that so much yet today. We're going to be talking about it soon, but not at the moment. So in this sense, for many, many years now, particularly since Death Event Day, over the last 11 years, I'm extremely aware while I'm asleep. I've had instances of this throughout my life, but it's very consistent in my life now since Death Event. Again, what happens during death phenomena and things of that magnitude is that it activates synapses, it activates certain mechanisms within your consciousness that were usually dormant. And if we maintain them and sustain them through certain practices and certain practices, then they can keep on running. And that's kind of what I've done. Let me give you another example. And this was going to be the more complicated one. Are you familiar with the term void of course in astrology?
Yes.
Okay, what does it mean?
It's the space between with the moon, I believe, particularly where it's not really in one or the other.
That is correct. It is the transitional state between, as the moon is transiting between signs. So, and it could be for 5 minutes, could be for a couple hours, and it's called void of course because technically it's not in any sign particularly. It's transitioning between them. And so technically void of course is marked by the fact that the moon is still the moon. It still exists. It is the moon. And yet it's not influenced by a sign. So it has its more own raw natural state. Many people experience void of course phase of the moon as a feeling of neutrality. They don't really feel one way or the other. It's just, again, kind of a raw conscious. When I say raw, that sounds kind of rough, but I'm saying something that's kind of gentle and smooth. So the moon void, of course, typically one of the ways we can tell is I will often think like, you know what, I don't really like feel anything. Like I feel neutral. Sure enough, I might look it up and I see the moon's void of course, right? Same thing with no moon. When we have no moon, it has very little influence. And so again, it's not that the moon doesn't exist. So as I said, this is a little bit more complicated reference to what it's like in the in-between life and death state. Now, what am I drawing here? I've given you this reference of astrological void of course, and yet I'm relating it to this in-between death experience. How does that work?
Well, the moon is just the raw moon energy, not influenced by a persona. And being in the in-between state, our soul is just our soul, and it's not influenced by Chloe or whoever.
Right. Our worldly phenomena. our identity and all the influences. So, and again, it still exists. It doesn't cease to exist. It just exists in an uninfluenced state. Now, the beauty of this is that without influence, being aware of my sleeping and being in a void of course state is that it's peaceful because it is just that, it's neutral. It's neutrality. You're not shadowed by and not burdened by ego and personal thoughts and desires and agendas. They still exist, but they're more dormant. So we've stripped away the layers of personality, personal character, ego, qualities, etc. And this is a beautiful condition because it's just something we very rarely get to experience. This is why we all like sleep so much, because sleep gives us a break from ourselves. For several hours, if we're sleeping properly, we simply get to check out, not just from the world, but from ourselves. From being who we are, which takes a lot of energy, a lot of consciousness and thought. Now, where death is concerned, we're all going to do it. We've all done it. And we're all going to do it. Can't be avoided. The natural part of life is death. And so why not try to make the most of it? Why not try to get the most out of it? There we are in this dormant state where we don't really have any ego, strong will, or desiring. They're very dormant. They're there, but they're not activated. And yet, so how can we interact with this and get something out of it? So we're all going to experience it. Now, understand that the afterlife, for lack of a better term, would be what's happening post that. Heaven, hell, reincarnation, whatever it may be. Let's turn that from this conversation as the afterlife, the after experience. Again, what we're talking about is the during experience, the and, dead and alive. And if we're in this rather neutral, void of course state, we want to be able to extract something from it. Let's jump to a little passage in the book. I knew I was dead, but I was not afraid. I asked the saffron presence, while I returned as I was, where are the angels, the loved ones who passed on before me? I do not feel alone, yet I am alone. She guided me. You shall return, rest. You will need the rest for what you will endure upon return. I will always be with you. Even when you do not believe or are aware of me, I will always be with you. As I've always been, I always will be. I am yours. You are mine. I had no doubt. She is eternal. We have been together always. Death was not scary. It was not worrisome. It was not blissful nor joyful. It was temporary. A silly delay, like a road detour on your way home. Nothing to get worked up about. Within the portal that lay between death and life, I had no need for a body or possessions. My mind was clear. My spirit was intact. I was in clear contact with my essence, my soul. No body, ego, or desires existed between us. My mind was aligned with my soul, not confined by space or time. I was able to know and be aware, without witnessing or being told, that the body known as Scott was being resuscitated by paramedics in an intersection. I'm not ready. Can I remain here a while? Your soul is the life force that animates your body. Without it, your body cannot live. Your soul must be returned to your body. Your time of death has not come. It was arranged that my soul be rejoined with my physical body to sustain it. Much of my spirit and my mind would remain here. I had no idea. I had no need to understand nor to plan or review. It was all known, like an instant download within my mind. the meaning of life, the meaning of death, perfect clarity of the human condition, who I truly am, a divine soul, who I have been, infinite lives and incarnations, and who I would become, who I could become, pure divine consciousness. The cosmic upload revealed the body of flesh is disposable. It is merely dense matter. Beneath it is the energy body, providing a base for form. It is subtle matter. Beyond both is my causal body. All my thoughts, knowledge, perceptions, emotions, destinies, and karmas for many lifetimes are stored within a causal frame. It is consciousness. All of them are made of worldly matter, some ethereal, formless and subtle, some dense and physical. Underlying all of them is my true essence, my soul. It is ever pure and never changing, perfect and divine. I understand that only my soul is divine. The rest of me is ordinary. Identity and body are ephemeral, ever changing and of dense matter. Mind and conscious are ethereal, ever changing but ever the same and of subtle energy. I understand there are just two phenomena, spiritual and material. The soul is spiritual, God is spiritual, and the rest is material. It's time to return, the saffron presence says to me. I have no thoughts about this. I have no preference. I only want to please her. Return, stay, suffer, exalt, whatever she wants, I belong to her, and she belongs to me. Will I remember here what I know, what I truly am? It will all reside within you. You can remember any time you truly wish from your heart and with good intention. I am always with you. I am all there is to remember. I am all there is to know. I did the best I could. This is the opening chapter of the book. I did the best I could to relate in human language an ineffable set of events. I didn't want to bog the text down by saying it wasn't quite like this, it was more like that. And whatever I'm saying, it's not like that. But that's pervasively a fact. Whatever I'm describing, it's nothing like that because it can't be described. You can't describe nothingness. Then when you try, it becomes something. The best you can say about nothingness is that it is the void of something, the lack of something. The common near-death experience phenomena, when people are relating angelic presences, passed on loved ones, etc., in the in-between state, is not so much the in-between, that's more the transitional state. So as the moon is void of course, within the portal, when we're in the portal completely, then we're in a neutral state, just aware. As we transit from the portal space to living phenomena, whether it's in body or whatever it may be, we have some awareness. Now we have perception. Now we have some sense of things. And again, this is what people are reporting. Most near-death experience phenomena are very quick, very brief, a couple of seconds. Few of them are extraordinary, but most of them that we hear about is somebody died real quick and they had this phenomenal set of experience within seconds. That's because time is completely irrelevant. Time does exist within the portal. It just is a different time frame. We can't relate to it. I'm not just saying that it's slower. I'm saying that I don't really know exactly in a mechanical, measurable way how to relate to it. Time does exist in the dormant state, but not the way that we know it here. And again, similarly, that time on Neptune is very different than it is here on Earth. The general near-death experience phenomena, again, is the transitional state, when you're just exiting or entering. This is where you're perceiving angelic beings, loved ones, etc. Now, this does not mean, again, as the moon is void of course, it does not mean that these spiritual phenomena are not present. They always exist. And as she's saying to me, she being the divine phenomena. I'm always with you. I'm all there is to know. I'm all there is to remember. Here I am, the writer of these things, and here it is a year later, and I'm still choked up by some of these phrasings. That this is a constant. Divinity is constant. Your soul is constant because your soul is divine. Your mind, your phenomena, your personality, your character, your life experience, ego, identity, etc., those are all temporary. Like death, temporary. So as we discussed recently about the Book of the Dead, books of the dead, Egyptian and Tibetan, these are manuals that train you to interact with your death experience so that you can willfully participate in the process for where did you go and what you experience. Otherwise, you could just be swept along with it and it takes you wherever you're going to go. We can get involved with this. So I don't want to get too far away from that because I want to really emphasize the beauty of just a peaceful state of just, for lack of a better term, nothingness. And I say lack of a better term because it can't be said it's nothingness, because nothingness would be a void. And as I point out within my story here, as to quote it myself again there, that I don't feel alone, yet I am alone. The presence of divinity has personality. And we are never alone. And we can tune into this anytime we want. The death experience can be very scary. The books of the dead, and much what this book is doing, is preparing you and training you and teaching you and encouraging you to become familiar with the process so that when it happens, it's not overwhelming and terrifying and scary and unpredictable. And I'm not suggesting to anyone that the death event is always going to be terrifying and scary. It's not at all. I'm saying that it can be. For most people, we don't know what's happening. Dying can be rough. Fear, the sensation of fear, is rooted in that which we do not know, things we cannot predict. Even if you're walking through a haunted house on Halloween and you're feeling that fear, someone's going to jump out at you. What's the fear causing the fear is the fact you don't know what's going to happen. You do know they're there. You do know they're going to jump, but you don't know when or how. Well, if you go through that same haunted house a second time, you know exactly where they're going to jump out. Not so scary because you now know what to anticipate. The unknown is now known. Human consciousness, the mind, doesn't naturally accept that which it does not know. Depending on our own state of growth, process, evolution, etc., is how we experience the unknown. Some people go up on a roller coaster and they put their hands up all the way down on the trajectory going down, and some people are holding on tight and terrified. I'm one of the hands up kind of guys. That's because I am scared. I love the fear because I don't know what's going to happen. And again, how we experience that is based on who and what we are, how we're preparing for that. I mean, you see people that go on roller coaster when they get off, they're like, I'm never doing that again. I mean, they were terrified. I mean, when I went skydiving the first time, I hit the ground And I was like, oh my God. I was like, so hands, I was like blown away, speechless, just screaming, yelling, like, oh my God, that was fantastic. 20 feet from me or so, maybe 30 feet, maybe 10 yards or so from me was a woman that just landed right behind me. She was crying and yelling and swearing, fuck this. Oh my God, that was absolutely terrifying. I'm never doing this shit again. Right. And I was like, and I'm right there, same time. I'm doing the same thing she did. And I'm like, that was amazing. Right. Perception. That's all it was. She was terrified and hated every moment of it. And me, I was like, changed my life. I never seen the sky the same again. Perception. We both did the same ground school preparation. We both had the same training. We clearly both went into this willfully, and so we both must have been looking forward to it. And yet I landed and thought I had a phenomenal time that I couldn't wait to do it again. And she was like, "This is the biggest mistake of my life," kind of experience. My point is that preparation is more about knowing the facts. Preparation is about steadying your mind, aligning your mind with spirit, familiarizing yourself with many things. This is what, again, the books of the dead are there to do, to help us understand what we may experience. And the books of the dead are literally saying in their text, there's going to be a lot of strange, wacky shit you see when you go to the other side. So we're going to make you familiar with it, so it's not going to freak you out. Some of it's beautiful, some of it's just weird. And so therefore, it's not something you're used to at all. So if you're not prepared, you don't know what's coming, you may react with fear, and that's going to take you into a very dark space. And so that's all the books of the dead are about, is trying to help you, make you familiar so that you're not fearing the unknown, because all fear is within the unknown. I think earlier in that same chapter, in that introductory chapter, I am asked, as I said, I don't really see anybody here. Like, am I alone? I don't feel alone, but I am alone, but I don't feel alone. And I said, I don't see passed on loved ones and pets and all that. What's going on? Like, am I not worthy of those things? And the Akashic agents were communicating to me telepathically and basically saying, like, no, you just have a pretty good understanding about life and death and spirit already. So it doesn't seem like you need these things to comfort you in this experience. Do you need those things? Would you like to have them? And I was like, no, I'm good. I wanted you to just experience that rather neutral state, devoid of course. I was enjoying it. As much as you could say enjoy neutrality, I liked not having any interactions and experiences just with the celestial presences of Akashic agents. To not have any work to do or things to think and figure out. So when I observed and noticed that I wasn't having these phenomena that I'd heard about, passed on loved ones and all this kind of stuff, and white light and all that, and I was offered it, said, well, do you need that? I mean, so we're not like depriving you of it. Would you like that? And I was like, no, I'm good. Like, this is actually kind of nice. Again, whether we're aware of our sleeping or not, we all enjoy it. People will say it all the time, like, oh, I slept great. How do you know? You were asleep. How would you know if you slept great? You know you slept great because you feel good, because you feel rested. And yet, all of us, most of us, I think, we wake up feeling fresh, and it's almost like we enjoyed our sleep. How can we be enjoying it when we're unconscious? Because again, there's that part of you that continues to perceive, think, and feel. In many ways, every night when we go to sleep, we are within the portal. We experience a state of dormancy, a lack of ego, neutrality of being, a break from desires, concerns, agendas, This is what's restful. This is what rest is all about, is to have a brief period of time where we can just be away from those things. Imagine a life, a week where you didn't sleep. And I'm not saying as people with sleep disorders, they're suffering a lot. I'm saying that what if you didn't sleep, but you never felt tired? You were felt fine, but you weren't tired, but you still never slept. You'd lose your shit because every day's events, you would not have an opportunity to be able to take a break from those for several hours and kind of clock out for a little while. It'd be an ongoing stream of thoughts and concerns, and we need this break. The in-between state, the portal, provides this. Again, trying to describe the ineffable which is always going to be contradictory. As I'm describing its neutrality, its indifference, its void of courseness, and yet I can't help but smile and feel so warm relating to it and even thinking of it because it is beautiful. Because again, in the analogy that I'm trying to provide, to be aware of being unconscious, being conscious of your unconsciousness. As a spiritual trainer, and even as a sleep trainer, that's one of the things I use to help people with their sleep issues, the sleep training. That's a primary modality that I use. Sleep training is essential to solving sleep issues. It is, again, a way of getting people to interact with the process, to take charge of it, rather than just allowing it to occur on its own, to take charge of it, to be involved with it, to be aware. The beauty of this, again, is that to simultaneously exist in a desireless state. And I had somebody point out to me in that very passage that I read that I was in this desireless state, and yet I wanted to please her, the divine presence. And this person asked me, so, well, which is it? Were you feeling desireless or you wanted to please her? That's a desire. And you know what, you caught me. You're right. I made a mistake, and I thought about rewriting the passage, and I thought, I modified it slightly by saying that it was a desireless state except for one, that I just wanted to please her, to please God, divinity, perfection. And as I said there, stay, return, suffer, exalt. I didn't care. I just wanted to please her. Whatever she wanted is what I wanted to do. And it wasn't, again, desire as we know it. It was complete trust, confidence. You could say faith. I don't lean towards that term very much. That whatever she wanted, whatever divinity wanted, was what was best, was what was necessary, was what is and was perfect for me. So in this sense, no, I did not have a desire. It's not even that I wanted what she wanted. I just didn't want anything else. Again, these conversations, as I'm describing it, as I hear myself speaking, I'm kind of like, you sound like a crazy person in an asylum. These are bizarre, abstract concepts. Like you're just going off on these things. Like if anybody heard a sentence of it, you'd be like, what does that mean? Right? And that's when I try to kind of bring it back in. So again, we'll bring it back down to a little more tangible areas that, again, if you could be aware of your sleeping condition and sleeping state, and again, as you transition from sleepfulness to wakefulness, the REM state, the dreaming state. In the last phase of REM, state of sleep, you're very aware. There's moments where you're like, is this really happening? Like, you have this consciousness where you're kind of like, this is really weird. Like, what's going, oh shit, I'm sleeping, I'm dreaming. That's what's going on. Familiar with that, right? And there you go. That's you being aware of not being aware, having consciousness of being unconscious. And I do that all the time. I'm like, as I'm beginning to wake up, I'm like, I'm in these thoughts, I'm doing these things. I'm like, well, that's really strange. Like, why is there, and why am I speaking to an owl? Why am, oh, I must be sleeping and dreaming because I'm not speaking to an actual owl. I must be in bed asleep. And then I'm like, well, that's bizarre. Like, that's kind of cool. Like, I'm laughing at it. Like, I'm kind of like engaging with it. Again, this can be fun. I'd say that one of the ways to practice and prepare for transitional states, being void of course, within the death phenomena, is indeed to examine, explore, adventure, and travel within the sleep and dream states. Again, as the books of the dead explain, that what you're going to experience in the transitional state, what they literally say is the in-between. It's a kind of a big title, the liberation of the in-between, is they're saying it's going to get really weird. There are some very strange beings there. Many of them are going to look and seem sinister and evil, but they're not. They're there to guide you. They're going to be, there are the fierce deities, they say, and the gentle deities. I don't think they say deities. I suddenly blown on blank on the word. The fierce entities and the gentle ones. And the fierce ones, again, they look like demons, and yet they're not out there to do anything evil. They're simply to kind of remind you, don't come this way, go that way. Everything has one singular purpose and goal: to take you through transitioning peacefully and beautifully if you're willing to go. Willingness, I think, is key and critical. And again, referencing back to being asked if I wanted or needed these presences and white light and pass on loved ones and all these kind of things. And I was like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm totally at peace with what's happening. Like, I don't feel like I need anything. I think this is worth thought. We live all our lives. 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 80 years, 90 years, whatever our lifespan is going to be. We're living all our lives. We have awareness of the death event. We prepare for it by creating a will, settling our affairs, having some insurance, or maybe what policies or whatever it may be. And yet we're not really giving much thought to it philosophically or spiritually. It's a very abstract event. I see this with humanity as avoidance. They don't want to think about it. How can you not think about something you're absolutely going to experience that's a pretty mysterious and major event, probably the most biggest event of your life other than being born to begin with, and yet not be curious, concerned? That sounds like atypical denial, avoidance. And it's not necessarily with fear. I think the avoidance and denial is simply, for most people, that's just a big, thick concept, and I don't want to fathom that any more than you, Krishnan, might want to understand or follow what is the square root of 27. I don't know, and I don't care. I got a calculator. I can figure that out if I ever need it. But honestly, I could never for a million years probably figure out how to do square roots. I did it once to graduate high school, and that was it. And then 5 minutes later, it was out of my head. I could not do it again. I avoided complicated math. I'm an academic. I was in advanced class since I was a child, and yet I failed math all the way till I was told I wasn't going to graduate. I ended up having to get my GED later because I didn't graduate technically. Math is a big part of the reason. And I avoided it because I didn't understand it. I didn't like it because I wasn't good at it. I didn't get it. It wasn't easy for me. Writing and language and history and all the other subjects in school, I absolutely loved them, and I excelled easily. I floated through them. I mean, I was again advanced class since I was young, and I was kind of killing it. Math, thorn in my side, just could not. And I just avoided it. I just continued to postpone it and avoid it until they said, guess what? You have got like a grade point average and everything else that's really stellar, but math is you cannot graduate. You're that's it. You're gonna fail. You got like 5 years of F's in math. And I avoided it because I didn't want to deal with it. I did not want to deal with it. It was too big, too heavy, and it didn't seem worthwhile to me. Still doesn't. So this is where the kind of the analogy breaks. I still don't really see the value. Because again, if I really want to know the square root of 27, I got a calculator. Now I can just Google that shit and look that up, man. But what I can't find is why I need to know it. Because I'm not a mathematician. I'm not building rocket ships into space. I don't work for NASA. I'm not an engineer. So I digress. Math will make you do that. Well, stay with that analogy a little bit. And again, all my life in my childhood, teachers and parents and adults, everyone's telling me, you need to know it. You need to know math. To function like an adult in the world and be able to succeed, you got to know math. And I'm like, I couldn't agree. I was like, no, I don't. Sure, if you do. And again, no, what I really need to know is how to find an accountant, how to hire somebody that does know math. That's what I need to know. And that's kind of what I did. But indeed, I repeatedly found out throughout my life that if I knew nothing on the subject and I had to turn the entire thing over to people that were not me, they were just doing a job, whether they did a good job or not, bottom line is, what if they made mistakes? How would I even know? And I'm the one that's going to pay the price for those mistakes, not them. I'm going to pay the price. They make a mistake on my taxes or my accounting, I'm going to pay the price. So I got to know it. Same with my recovery from my accident. I had to back up. I could not rely on doctors to tell me what's what. They all contradicted themselves. One guy's telling me one thing, another one's telling me something else. I'm like, what the hell? And most of them are saying, we don't know what to do for you. Like, we've never seen this before. You're a medical miracle. We don't know what to do. We don't know what to tell you because nobody's ever done it before. So I had to try to navigate and I had to figure it out. Like math, I had to get the information and figure it out on my own. So the basics, at least, are good to know. We're all going to die. We're all going to experience the in-between state, whether it's for a moment or whether it's for a quantity of time that we can't quite assess or anticipate. Could be moments, and we could transition to a celestial abode, a heavenly abode, a hellish abode, reincarnation, whatever it may be. But it's going to happen. And so we don't really know whether it's going to be quick or long or what's there. It is better to anticipate and plan ahead. If, the big if you get to the other side within the portal and you get to choose where to go, Do you want your answer to be to angelic beings and Akashic agents that saying, well, you're here within the portal, you get to, where do you want to go? Do you want your answer to be, I don't know? Because I'll tell you that if you say, I don't know, they're going to say, okay, we'll decide for you. Now, these are angelic beings, so they will decide what's best, but you definitely want to be involved with the process. You're not stripped of your ego and will entirely, your identity, your karmas. As I said, your causal body, your ability to think and feel, your energy body. Again, there's those three: your physical body, your energy body, your chakras, etc., and then your causal body, which is your thoughts and feelings, your consciousness. You want to be and need to be involved with the process. You have to be. And again, everything in life, big events such as buying a house. Let's say you decide to buy a house. Do you make up your mind to buy a house and go out and buy one the next day? You do your work, you do your research, you do your preparation. You look around the market. You go. You don't just go. Instead of buying a car, you don't just go to the lot and just buy a car. You select. You get involved with the process. You have options to choose from. And again, same with this other material analogy, where you're buying a car. Okay, well, there's many options, but let's face it, many of them are basically, many of the features are basically the same. 4 tires, steering wheel, gears, engine, takes fuel or electricity, whatever it's going to be. The generalities are all consistent. So you don't have to be an expert in everything, but what do you want? How much money do you have to spend? What kind of experience do you want to have? What color do you want it to be? All kinds of options that you want to be involved with. You wouldn't go to the car lot and go to the salesman and say, I don't know, just give me whatever you think is best. Oh my God, you would never do that. Similarly, to get involved with our death experience within the portal, rather than just appreciate it, rather than just experience it, which is a beautiful experience to have, to get involved with what we experience during, for the after. Any questions? Okay. The much of the preparation can be and should be to again look forward to it. As I try to eloquently state in there, that it wasn't, I was not afraid. It wasn't wasn't anything to be worked up about. It's kind of like a detour on your way home. Nothing to get worked about, just temporary. And as the quote at the beginning of that chapter is John Lennon saying, I'm not afraid of death because I don't believe in it. It's just like getting out of one car and into another. But there's my own kind of analogy there that sure, it's about getting out of one car and into another, but what are you going to get into? By getting involved with the process while we're living, to appreciate, to honor. And that's the best way I can put it, I guess, is to honor, appreciate the blessings that we continue. You don't stop. Your mind, not just your soul is eternal. It will always go on in one form or another, formless or within form. but your soul can never be created nor destroyed. Just like energy in the universe cannot be created nor destroyed. It is eternal. And this is the beauty of it. And again, to honor that, to be able to appreciate the experience of it. We don't know what we're going to experience. Becoming familiar is the best way to dilute and neutralize some of the overwhelming aspects of it, the death event. And indeed, I'm certainly encouraging again to enjoy it. Again, part of what the books of the dead are saying in their training methods is don't get freaked out and worked up about these things you're going to see, accept them as they are. As a matter of fact, so much of the Tibetan Book of the Dead is a series of prayers that you chant over someone who's dying for hours, sometimes weeks prior to them actually passing on, when they're in the dying process. And you're doing this so that they can hear them. And again, it makes them interact with it, that they don't get overwhelmed by this. And what they're always saying in every pastor in one of these little prayers as you chant to somebody who's dying is it always closes with something along, again, I can't quote it exactly. I don't have that kind of capacity to quote. It says almost every prayer closes with something along the lines of be not afraid. Do not attach to this. Simply observe and enjoy it and watch it happen. You are moving on. Everything is beautiful. Everything is fine. So what you're doing is reminding the person that's in the death experience that what you're experiencing, don't worry about it. Don't attach to it. Whether it's beautiful or whether it's scary, don't attach to it. It's just something you're observing. Keep moving along. It's giving you the permission, which I find so beautiful within both books of the dead, that it's giving you the permission to just appreciate it, to not try to change it or understand it really even, but to just appreciate it. To have faith, understanding that you are protected, you are guided. Roll with the experience. And it's saying again, the paradox there, the contradiction. Roll with it, and yet simultaneously interact with it, engage with it. You're being told both within the books of the dead to experience it raw and pure and just observe and just accept for what it is. And simultaneously, you're also being told, engage with it, get involved, ask questions. What this is encouraging you to do is to retain your ability to think and feel. So that your consciousness stays consistent, consistently active. The in-between state is extremely restful. As it's said in that passage, as I'm told, rest. You will need rest for what you're about to endure upon return. Boy, was she right about that. What I experienced upon return would have been continued to experience upon return. It was rough. Again, as I've often pointed out, I didn't just shake it off and go back to work the next day. I was in a coma for 9 days. I was in a hospital for 28. I had severe traumas and injuries and all kinds of bad things going on for a long, long time. It wasn't an instant event. How would I have fared had I not felt, you could say, rested from the in-between state where I was for those 9 days? We'll never know. But I can make an educated guess and tell you that not too well, because I definitely, again, the entire time felt as though I was resting, dormant, and I was comforted, assured, you could say, giving assurance that it's going to be okay. I am always with you. I'm all there is to remember. And you can remember anytime you want with good intention, with your heart, with good intention. This is what I was being told. As I asked, will I retain what I've experienced here? The awareness. I don't want to forget. I don't want to forget how absolute I don't have another word for that. Absolute the experience was. It wasn't questionable. And that was my only, could say, fear or concern, is I didn't want to come back to the material world and have my soul re-inhabit my body, my conscious re-inhabit my body, and forget. And she's comforting me, ensuring me you can remember anytime you want with heart and good intention. Those words are very carefully selected as I wrote that in. With good intention. That if I get involved, engaged with the experience, and anytime I chose to remember the divine space, the portal space, the divine presence within the portal space, Akashic agents, that with good intent, rather than fear, confusion, or on my own personal ego or desires, with good intent, to simply exist, to be with, to honor and to love, that I would be able to tap into that phenomenal experience anytime. And that has proven to be factual for me. Again, that it's been 11 years since my death event. And I often point out that it's an ongoing experience. I'm fine, but with the work that I've done, it didn't happen automatically. I've continued to sustain a connection with Akashic agents, the in-between state, the portal realm, again, with effort and work. It doesn't happen on its own. When I don't put forth the effort to sustain that connection and communication, then it does go dormant. I've got to initiate it. I've got to be involved. This is so often, again, what I'm talking about, a consistent theme in my teaching and encouragement with people is that when you have a spiritual awakening or an event, it's not the end of it, it's the beginning. That's where it starts. I didn't look at my death event, my death phenomenon, near-death experience, witnessing and interacting with the other side as a one-time thing. It was just the start. And it continues again to continue. It continues to this day. So we're talking about the preparation to the death event experience itself can help you adjust to it and extract the bounties from it. And then after it's done, to continue to interact with it. Meditation, study, prayer. Take your pick. All of it is sadhana. Whether you're reading a book on spiritual concepts that's accurate and true and genuine, or whether you're in a meditation room or in church, it's all sadhana. It's all you interact with the process. You're keeping the lines of communication flowing and open. the concept, the theory with the in-between experience is that there are celestial and divine presences that are always aware of you. We all have our personal guardian angel, so to speak. It's if we choose to turn our attention to them, because their attention is always on us. They are personal, and yet they serve countless souls. One angel, one Akashic agent may serve countless souls, dozens, hundreds, who knows? But the ones that you interact with, it feels like they just exist just for you. And that you seem to only exist just for them, that you're the only thing on their mind. We can embrace these concepts and this phenomena. This doesn't mean we have to stop living our material lives, going to work, paying our bills, staying healthy and staying fit. I am very attentive to all those areas of life. You should be. It means that you roll them all together. We multitask by synthesizing, absorbing our spiritual practices and perspectives in life along with our material ones. Again, the awareness and realization that we're all going to die. And I'm not encouraging people to fixate on it. We need to live. The meaning of life is to live. But there's more to living than just life. Life includes death. Again, I'm trying to resist talking a lot about the afterlife and that whole phenomenon, prior and after. That's very difficult for me because that's how we automatically see things. Again, we're not going to work every day because we want to be in the Zen moment at work. Most of the time, what we're working towards is trying to get our tasks done and complete to feel accomplishment, achievement, and get a paycheck, where it's a means to an end. And again, it's difficult to talk about the transitional state without automatically including and putting emphasis on where it's going, prior and after. And I made a very strong commitment for this talk to not do that. I was not going to go into the after and the before. And again, it's a struggle. How much can I talk about the in-between state of the nothingness, of the void, of the portal, which again is not nothing. This itself can become a meditation. Now, I'll tell you that why I do not and did not follow the Tibetan Buddhist path and the Book of the Dead is because I do not personally, and since I was young, I automatically appreciated and studied it, but I early on concluded that it wasn't for me. Because it is not training you to transition from the bardo, the portal dimension, to something. It's preparing you to transition from the portal bardo in between state to virtual nothingness, liberation, literally, and again, I can't quote the entire title, but the Book of the Dead in Tibetan, in the language of Tibet, and in Sanskrit is a rather long title that says the practice of the in-between of liberation. And there's like 3 or 4 more other words to that. But again, the gist of it is the practices of the in-between to liberation. Liberation is just that. When your soul and your consciousness no longer exist within the material realm, they join with the everything, and consciousness is then terminated. And that's why there's no more suffering, because consciousness is what causes suffering, because we think and we feel. And ever since I was young, I was like, well, I don't really want to be in nothingness. I don't experience nothingness. I want to experience something, beauty, bliss, divinity. Depends on the path. Has been talked about in several other classes, as often talked about. There is more than one. We can attain afterlife, after death, not during, but after. Celestial abodes, you could say heavenly abodes, hellish abodes, reincarnation as plant, animal, human, whatever, all these different kind of options. Out of one car into another, and which car is going to be kind of up to you. And again, the liberation is none of those, no abodes, to simply have the conscious ends, the soul is rejoined, or you could say, because it's always joined, the soul, ego, body, consciousness is stripped away, so it's just pure soul and becomes one singular drop of soul in the infinite ocean of souls, of the soul power. That's what liberation is. The soul realization experience, the samadhi of Buddhism is exactly that, where your consciousness is liberated from the material phenomena. It is no longer bound by desires, and your karmas are terminated, and you are just become one with the everything. Again, the downside, if there is one, which I choose to look at that way, it's my own subjective perception, that the downside is, as within the portal, within the bardo, not really experiencing anything. You're experiencing and perceiving, but you're not involved. It's just happening. You just are. Now, again, once you attain liberation after the bardo portal, you're not perceiving anything. You are liberated from that altogether. You just exist. Again, trying to describe the ineffable. You don't have a mind to perceive your existence, and yet I can tell you within the portal, I was aware of my existence and that I had no need or awareness of it. Can't describe the indescribable. Again, what is being described in the event of liberation? And this is throughout the Buddhist and Hindu Sanatana Dharma texts. They explain it very detailed, very specifically. That once liberation is attained, your soul merges with the everything. There's everything so-called nothingness, and your consciousness, body, and karmas are terminated. You're no longer bound by those things. Again, they're also trying to describe what can't be described, that you have no faculties to perceive your condition or state. You just are. It's kind of the best way I can put it. You just are. You just is. You just be. The reason it's hard to describe and relate outwardly or to understand it is because we can't perceive that. We have no reference point. As stupid humans, my affectionate term for just being human, everything we experience is in duality. There is a me and a you. There is a here and a there. There is a now and a then. There's always duality. In the liberated state, there is no duality. It is monistic. It is oneness, complete oneness. The mind awareness is what causes is not, well, I wouldn't say causes, is what perceives duality. So the liberated state, the oneness is because there is no mind anymore to experience duality. See, there's one of these kind of loops that as I describe it, I feel like I want to continue to describe it to kind of make sure you understand it. But I also realize I can't do that. I just did describe it. I think that I'm not sure. Does it sound understandable?
As much as one can grasp.
Right?
And
Even answering that question makes it hard to answer, right? You can't quite answer it either.
yeah.
Well, that means you're understanding it. It truly does. And again, like Zen concepts, all real true spiritual phenomena. Again, Zen is a great way to think. When you understand that you can't understand it, that's when you're starting to understand it. So understanding is taking place. That's what realization truly is. To be able to accept and understand that which you cannot be understood. Now, in the in-between state, what I experienced was my own version of total clarity. I understood that which was not understandable. Now, I'm cheating because the reality is in the in-between state, you do still have and retain some, again, awareness, consciousness, etc. I wasn't just being, I was still, identity was still present. I can simply say it was significantly less ego, but I have to admit that it was still present, not in the form that I know it. Again, as desires and personality and character and virtues and any of those kind of things. Those things were not burdening me or bogging me down at all. I gotta be out of my mind trying to describe these indescribable things. It's gonna give me a headache. That again, we can't grasp that the true liberated state is none of those things. It's way less and way more. Within the dimension in between the bar and the portal, you have a fundamental awareness, chitta, consciousness, pure raw consciousness, and that's it. From all I have gained and understood from understanding and studying liberation, samadhi, nirvana, I don't want it. I want to perceive. You're not going to get bored when you're within the portal and you're not experiencing anything and you're kind of a neutral state, void of course, so to speak. You're not going to get bored. You're not like, well, I've done this for a while, but I'm kind of done with that. As far as I know, maybe you do. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't there forever. Maybe you do. It is so content and peaceful that, as far as I know, again, you don't have any desires or will or ego or wants. So therefore, you're pretty cool. As a stupid human, I can't help but to conclude that eventually I would get bored with that. I would want something to occur. that again is contradictory because I did not experience that while I was there. I didn't have any sense that I would ever experience that. I was completely content. As a stupid human, I think, well, eventually I'd be like, okay, well, I'm done with this. Let's move on. And maybe that is why we come back and move on to other things because we're not ready to stay or go into a liberated state. We haven't earned that yet. And this again probably ties into this concept with near-death experiences saying that they chose to come back. And I always point out that in a way you do and in a way you don't. You choose by the way you live. You don't go there and choose because trust me, none of us would come back. You're there and everything's perfect. And you're like, well, I'm not going back. I mean, Earth is a cool place to visit. I don't want to live there. You know, this is totally fine. The divine realization rather than soul realization is an experiential phenomenon. The reason divine realization is pursued and sought after by many spiritualists and preferred rather than self-realization, so-called soul realization, is because it's experiential. You're not going to a dormant state for eternity. You get to experience. Your mind becomes divinized. Rather than terminated, it becomes divinized. It gets changed from a material consciousness to a divine consciousness. So you exist permanently in a state of bliss, perfection, where you can perceive simultaneously. You're one with and perceiving it. This is why, for me, as much as I admire and appreciate the beauty within the books of the dead and really enjoy reading them. I mean, I'm explaining a little phenomenon about that recently, about what I've been reading there, is that I don't want them. What it ultimately describes, I don't want nothingness. I'd rather have nothingness than somethingness that's not perfect, but I want perfect. A little observation with my latest reads within the books of the dead is that, again, the majority of the text is these prayers and incantations and things that you're doing for yourself and for someone that is in the dying process to help them transition in a safe state so that they can experience it and get the most out of it rather than get caught in a state of fear or go into something negative. And then it's followed by a more raw awareness that's really just kind of honoring the situation, which I've enjoyed. I really enjoyed that part. But the strange thing is, I finished that a little while ago, and now I'm in the final parts of the book, which is the glossary, a dictionary of all the terms, what they mean. And I am having so much fun with that part. Like all these words and all these concepts and terms that are described. And I mean, I'm just so blown. I'm really having a lot of fun with that part. And it's not just that I'm having fun. It's because I feel like I'm getting more. Again, what the Books of the Dead is doing is preparing you for, making you familiar with the event so that when you get to go through it, you can not get caught in it and you can transition and move on and through it. That's what I'm getting with the glossary and the dictionary part of it, is that I'm getting so familiar with the concept. There are moments where I'm just reading, I'm like, okay, I got to write that down. I got to remember to pick that up and make some notes about that. I don't want to forget that particular word. There's so many of them. So I'm only in the F. They're in alphabetical order. I'm only in the F. And it's been 3 days, three evenings reading it. That again, it's comforting me and reassuring me that what I'm getting from the experience and from the knowledge is, I don't know, not something I'm going to forget. It's making me very familiar with it in terms that I can understand. The prayer parts were very abstract and very ethereal. And they're describing the fierce entities and the gentle entities are describing these things in detail as you're transitioning through them and these prayers that you're doing through it. And again, for me, that's very abstract. I'm like, I can't quite relate to that. I'm not seeing it, so I can't quite relate to that. But these words and concepts, I'm able to align with. I'm able to really kind of grasp them. I like that. I think we're going to start wrapping it up. It's going to be a little bit of a briefer discussion than maybe normal. But again, I don't know what more there is to talk about with the in-between state. I think it made the point to prepare with the wondrousness of it, to appreciate the phenomena, and just that, to appreciate phenomena itself. Phenomena is that which is extraordinary. And extraordinary is, let's break that down. Extraordinary, para, beyond, not just ordinary, but more than ordinary. Not just bizarre, but more than. Whatever you have, it's more than, it's that and some. Extraordinary. To have fun with this. And again, this does not need to become a fixation or obsession that disrupts our material lives and our productivity. It can be a fun hobby. We're going to watch documentaries and movies and films and read things either way. Why not involve ourselves with something that's ethereal and strange and mysterious and is relatable too, that we're all going to experience? Why not entertain ourselves with something that's profound? Any questions? Any comments? Is that because I did a good job explaining what it can't be explained?
The best of one's ability.
Well, thank you. I take that as a high compliment. Yeah, you never know when we say, well, I don't have a question, so because again, we don't know what to ask. And part of it is because indeed we know that we can't really grasp it. And so therefore, what's the point? And at the same time, it's like, yeah, but I kind of get it. Like I get it by not getting it. And that's kind of where we're going with this. That's the excitement, I think, about discussing spiritual phenomena, is that it's not, it does challenge us, and yet it's stimulating in a very gentle way. So, to be continued. We'll pick another topic next week and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and wrap it up. Jai Shiradi, glory to the essence of divine love. Transition safe. Be prepared.